train to start. And the bird was pooped. Thanks for missing me. I'm gonna wait to start this for a moment. Or maybe I won't. I'm not gonna wait to start this, because I gotta get going. What is a food forest? So if you look in the forest, you'll see things like your big overstory trees. So this would be like a big overstory tree here. This one's actually got to come down soon. It's a dying yellow birch. My neighbor's property. So you have the big overstory trees. Then you'd have smaller trees underneath it. You'd have bushes underneath that. And then as you come down, you're gonna have your herbaceous layers. You're gonna have things like, you know, your herbs and this one's actually lavender. And then you're gonna come down a little further and you're gonna have ground cover. So this is plantain, got clover in here, a lot of stuff like that. Then when you go down again, you're gonna have root layers. So you're gonna have, in a garden, that'd be things like your carrots and your potatoes. And then growing up that, you'll have vines growing up some of your trees. And actually over here, it's a good example of this just happened on its own. So on the other side of this fence here, there was a big part of a tree that fell down on the neighbor's property here. And he got somebody to come cut down the rest of the tree and remove it. They didn't remove it, which means this corner got abandoned. So it's been left to just grow wild. And it's got these grapes on it. I've finally gotten it that they might actually produce grapes this year. But going up the other tree, there are grapevines all throughout. And basically, nature uses the big trees as trellises for the vines. And then there's another layer that isn't usually talked about that I like to include, which is the fungal layer. Forests naturally have fungal-rich soils, which is why we find mushrooms pretty much everywhere in the forest. So we can go through and we can look at a forest and see that it sustains itself. It is a natural, sustainable, regenerative system. So in theory, if we were to copy a forest and plant it out and then walk away for 10, 20 years, it should be better than when we left it. That doesn't apply to our gardens typically, but it can. So how do we do that? Well, we pick trees. We do our overstory trees, which could be nut trees. They could be things like that. Because I'm in town, my overstory is going to be like this. So this is a pear tree. It's going to grow to about 25 feet tall. And then around that, we can have understory trees. So here, just a little ways away, I've got, this is a dwarf sour cherry. Just far enough away that as this tree is growing, its drip edge, the water coming off of it's going to come down, it's going to land on here, it's going to water this. So that's great. And then at the edge of that, I should have some a bit closer, but I don't at the moment. I've got things like this, which is a hascap bush. It's going to grow up to about 1 meter tall. We've got rhubarb all in here, and these are acting as kind of the bush layer, the shrub layer. And while rhubarb isn't technically a shrub, if you look at it, I mean, the size of these are just seedlings last year. They take the physical space of a shrub. So in my mind, I'm going to use them as a shrub. I also use them as a living mulch, a ground cover that will, it shades out an area, so it's harder for weeds to get through from that abandoned part of my neighbor's property. And there are some pretty nasty weeds that come through there. And so then we've got that, and then we're going to go and we're going to stick some herbs in. So I've got, what all do we have here? Actually, I have some that I haven't planted yet that are annuals, like sages and basil. You can have your oreganos. I've got creeping thyme. I've got hyssop. I've got which are a bunch of low flowering things as well. And then the ground cover, which would be like the creeping thyme, the Roman chamomile is another ground cover. I've got lots of strawberries going. So around the base of this pear tree here, I've got, this is asparagus. This was seedlings last year. And then I've got some strawberries in here. There are various herbs in here. And those are going to fill in and they're going to cover most of the soil, which means that the soil isn't going to dry out on us. And so then I have vines, but I'm not putting the vines up the trees just because I'm trying to have the trees be productive, and I have all this fence here. So I'm growing my vines along the fences for the most part. And I will also continue to harvest the grapes that grow on my neighbor's tree. And so that's the food forest. I've over here, this is the extra layer. I don't have root crops in there yet. This is still a very young food forest, and I'm still developing it. But over here, I've got, this is still colonizing. This is King Stradivarius, or garden giant mushroom. So it is coming in here, it's taking over all of this material that I've left in here. There's a couple layers of it in here, and it's going to grow, and it's going to add mushrooms to the garden, which then I can take handfuls of that mycelium. The mycelium is the main part of the mushroom. That is of the mushroom plant. The mushroom itself is just the fruit. You can pick that and not change anything. That's like me coming, and if these grapes were ripe, me picking a grape off and eating it. That's what happens when you pick a mushroom off and eat it. It has the seed in it, the spore, but it doesn't actually harm the plant at all. And so I'm going to take some of that mycelium, and that's the main structure of the plant. That's the life of the plant. That's what goes underground. It's the root system. And I'm going to take that, and I can plant it somewhere else. I actually planted some over in my my annual bed over there just yesterday. So now, with all these things working together, I'm not quite at the point yet because my roots aren't fully established, and I still need to fill some more stuff in. But I might be able to walk away right now for 10 years and come back, and this would be so much better than it is now. This pear tree would be nice and big. It would be producing lots of fruit. I'd have all those berry trees would be mature and producing. The apple tree would be big and producing. I've got some plum trees here. I've got the elderberries. They'll be producing fruit, providing lots of food for the birds as well. The cherry tree, I have a couple other types of apples and plums and Saskatoon berries, and I've got hazelnuts. All of these things are just going to keep on growing and getting better. They're going to keep supporting each other. The strawberries are going to keep on spreading. They're going to keep covering the ground, which is going to help keep some of the other weeds down. A lot of what you're seeing down here that is in my weedy garden at the moment is either stuff that I let go to seed last year. So as I go in here, I can pick like all sorts of, if I got all sorts of radishes. This is just, it went to seed last year, and that's what's going to happen. So although this is an annual, it's acting as kind of as a perennial because it puts on seed, it drops the seed, and it grows. So those are probably going to keep on spreading as well and covering in some of this area. The rhubarb's going to keep spreading, getting thicker, providing a really nice thick barrier all around the outside to keep weeds out. The kiwi vine will probably be everywhere because it does grow fairly aggressively. And that's how you can create something that is, I feel like that is sustainable, but it's also can be regenerative because this landscape here, it was all invasive weeds and really degraded soil, and the soil's getting better every year as these trees drop their leaves, as all these plants die and drop their petals and their leaves. So I think that leaving now, this would be a fantastic landscape. So think about that when you're planting. This is, I call it my little Eden's refuge, because if I had in like the Garden of Eden, I think that it would be a lot like this, a lot of perennials, the stuff that you don't have to plant every year. a place where nature just, let's see if I can show you, nature just moves in. That was a bird feeder that a squirrel broke the top off, and within not very long, we ended up with a bird friend in there. So try and think about some perennials that you can grow, some way that you can let your plants interact, and how you can look at nature, interact with nature, replicate nature, and then let nature do the work. Now, in there, nature's doing the work. Out here, this is a place that I would have to continue to weed and take care of, and I have to do the work. I have to do the nature's job of pest control, because basically everything along here is in the same, they're all take the same pests. They all need the same pollinators. It's all very similar. They all use the same nutrients, and none of them are really giving nutrients back into the soil. I didn't mention I do have things in there that fix nitrogen as well. They are actually fertilizing the soil every day, especially when I chop off plants, or when rabbits come and they chew off the clover or the tops of things like the sea berries. Anytime those get chewed back, they're going to release nitrogen into the soil. So take a look, see how you can work with nature instead of against it. And even if you have a little urban property, see if you can grow something. Most people have a backyard, at least in this area, that is, my neighbor's is 4 times the size of that.